Hello, dear English teachers in Pamplona. How are you doing? This is Miguel Diaz over here. I'm glad to be the assistant of the project and I'm glad to finally meet you. Well, I hope to meet you someday in person, face to face. And this video, the reason why we are sending this video is because we thought you might need some help in terms of how to plan based on the 4Cs. So I'm going to show you what a plan based on the 4Cs actually looks like, how you can plan it, how you can actually carry it out, how you can make it, and we are going to see how to incorporate it into the format that you have at your school. So without further ado, I'm going to show you one of the plans that you sent. So this is an example from preschool, and this is what you sent. So this is from Pamplona. We can see here that everything is very well structured. Yes, we have the different domains, we have the different language levels. Yes, vocabulary, phonics, syntax, spelling, different topics, my body, family, friends, and we have the standards, also resources, methodology, and didactics. Everything is okay. That is excellent. However, the step further that we are thinking about taking with you is that we actually see the 4Cs in the plan. What does it mean? Let's remember what the 4Cs are: communication, content, cognition, and culture. So the idea is that in the syllabus, in the plans, we actually see the 4Cs. Let's see. If we go farther in your plan, we actually see that we don't find the 4Cs. They are not there. So this is why we're sending this video, so that after this video, you are finally able to include the 4Cs in the plans, so that you can send them again for us to be able to check, okay? So as we can see, everything is very well structured. It's a very good plan, but we don't see the 4Cs of the project in here. So I'm going to show you an example from other schools, from Bethlehemite schools in Palmira, in Popayan, and in Pasto. I'm going to show you how they have actually included the 4Cs into the format, into the syllabus. So the first example is going to be Palmira. This is a plan from Palmira. As you can see, Bethlehemite sisters, Palmira, they have their own structure. Yes, they say the term, the grade, the subject, the teacher, yes. But what we actually want to emphasize on here is that they have this map. The idea is that you make this map that has the 4Cs. As we can see, we have the map, and the map has content, communication, cognition, and culture. Again, what I want to emphasize on here is that the map with the 4Cs is in the plan, in the syllabus. Yes, I'm going to give you a hand on how to identify the 4Cs on the material, but that's going to be later on in the video, okay? As we can see in Palmira, they also have the standards, they also have competences, yeah, the methodology. But again, the emphasis here is the map is there. The 4Cs are there. This is what we want to see in your plans. It can be a map, it can be a chart, but the idea is that the 4Cs are actually there. Remember, content, communication, cognition, and culture. Yes, I'm going to go back to your plans because you had them there. but you didn't develop them. Let's see what I mean. In high school, we found that you actually mentioned the 4Cs and you actually mentioned CLIL as an approach, and we are very happy to find that. And here are the 4Cs. However, they are not developed. What do we mean by developed? The idea is that just like here in Palmira, you take the book and you find these 4Cs in the book and you put them in the plan. What does it mean? For example, if this is the first term or the second term, the idea is that you take the units of the book that belong to the second term of the year and you find in those units of the book that belong to the second term these 4Cs. So you say, oh, in the second term, students are going to see this in content, this in culture, this in cognition, and this in communication. Again, we are going to review the categories later on. But my point here, and I hope I'm not repeating it too much, is that the 4Cs need to be developed here in the plans, okay? I want to show you another example. And it's here in Popayan. This is the plan from Popayan. This is the syllabus, the English syllabus. They have an introduction, they have developed it, and if we go later on, it's going to be more specific, and they have the 4Cs included in the syllabus: content, cognition, communication, and culture. If you see, this is first grade. The idea is that you develop the 4Cs in all of the grades and also in all of the terms of the year. Okay. And they also have a map. We highly recommend that you plan the 4Cs in a map so that it gives you a visual glimpse, a visual overview of what the year is going to look like, of what you are going to teach during the year. And the 4Cs need to be there: culture, cognition, communication, and content. They have to be there. So if we scroll down, we see that the 4Cs are there, and also the map. The 4Cs are there. We already saw first grade, second grade, this is third grade, and as you can see, the 4Cs are there. I'm actually going to highlight them so that you see them. And again, the map. So, final conclusion, 4Cs need to be developed for all years, all grades, all terms, and they have to be in the syllabus. So your plans have to have the 4Cs: communication, content, cognition, and culture. I hope I'm not repeating them too much, and if I am, it's just a reminder, okay? And last but not least, I have another example. And this is the example from our Bethlehemite colleagues in Pasto, Colombia. So, this is the syllabus. They have their introduction, all of the theory, all of the methodology, okay, but we want to reach this part in which they mention the 4Cs, and it's right here. So, grade, preschool, competences, standards, okay, and here you find the 4Cs. Do you see? It's a map, it's a mind map, but they are there. And they are developed in all of the years, all of the grades, all of the terms. The first step is going to be plan the first term. Yes, you don't have to plan the whole year based on the 4Cs all at once. No, what you have to do is you have to plan the first term, and then when you are done with the first term, we are going to agree on a date so that you send the plans on the 4Cs for the second term, and we go term by term, okay? Transition, and the 4Cs are there. So, big point, big conclusion, the 4Cs need to be developed for all grades, for all terms, in the syllabus itself, okay? Let's continue with the next part of the tutorial. Okay, in this second part of the tutorial, I would like to focus on the 4Cs. The past 10 minutes I spent some time talking about how we can incorporate the 4Cs and how we actually need to do that into the syllabus, into the plans, okay? So I showed the examples of Palmira, Popayán, and Pasto, and if we remember, the maps that had the 4Cs were there in the syllabus, and that's what we want to achieve with you. We want you to send your plans, your syllabus with the 4Cs in them, inside. It's very important that all of the C's are developed, and we are going to see what we mean by that. So now it's the time to review the categories, and if we remember, there are 4Cs, and these on the screen are 4 icons that are going to remind us of all the 4Cs all the time. This first one is communication, yeah, everything that is related to language. The second one is related to content. The third one is related to culture. And this one is related to cognition, everything that is related to thinking, all of the thinking processes. This is a map, an example of a map, and this is the structure, yeah? These are the 4 parts that a map has. The idea is that you, if you can do that, the idea is that you include these kinds of maps in the plans, in the syllabus, yeah? And let's see what each C is about. As we can see, we have the 4 C's there, and one of them has 3 subcategories. Which one is that? Exactly, that's communication. If we see, communication has language of learning, language for learning, and language through learning. It's very important. It's very important to mention that they sound very similar and very close to each other, but they are actually different. And let's go deeper into them. Communication is everything related to language, yeah? Everything that is going to be related to English in this case, because we are teaching English. So, what is the difference among language of learning, language for learning, and language through learning? It's this. In language of learning, we are going to put everything that is related to grammar, tenses, structures, vocabulary. Let's say, for example, present perfect, simple past, those are tenses, so we include them in language of learning. Structures, prepositions, for, since, about, all of these little pieces, these little structures of the language are going to go here in language of learning. Everything related to grammar and to vocabulary is in this subcategory of communication. Then, if we go on, we're going to see language for learning. This second subcategory has all of the communicative functions that students are going to achieve. Yes, sometimes we need grammar, we need vocabulary in order to what? To communicate. So here, language for learning has the functions. For example, if we have in language of learning simple present and days of the week, yeah, that's vocabulary. In language for learning, we can say what we actually do with simple present and days of the week. For example, describe your daily routine. If you see that's a communicative function, it has a verb. This verb is communicative and it's describe. So what do you do with language of learning? You achieve a communicative function, and this is language for learning. So if we had simple present and days of the week in language of learning, In language for learning, we can have describing your daily routine. Everything that is like communicative verbs, that's going to go here, language for learning. Regretting, describing, saying, asking, answering, expressing, those are examples of communicative verbs, and that's going to be in language for learning. Language for learning is a very, very interesting subcategory. Here, we include the activities that teach something more than English. Sometimes in the books, in the course books, we are going to find several activities in which you say, here they are teaching something more than English. For example, those hands-on activities, those activities in which you teach students how to create something. How can we create a poster? How can we create a calendar? How can we create? Those are activities in which students are learning how to create something, how to make up something, but through that they are also learning English. Okay, in language through learning we also include the learn how to activities, those tips that help us improve learning, those sequenced activities in which you lead the student to achieve, to make something. Yeah. So these language through learning activities are activities that go beyond language. It's not only about English, it's also about learning something else. Also, it's very important to mention that in language through learning, these activities have a sequence. They can be divided into pre, while, and post. Yes, so there is a whole sequence to follow, and it's very important not to forget about that. All of the micro skills, all of the little tips that we give to students to improve their listening, speaking, reading, or writing skills, they are also language through learning. So this is the first C. This is often one of the C's in which we don't have a lot of problems. We don't usually struggle with this because this is our area. This is English. This is language. This is the C for language. Here we have some examples. In language for learning, since we said it's all about structures, vocabulary, examples can be WH questions, adverbs, modal verbs, present simples, present progressive, present perfect, those tenses, auxiliary verbs, these little pieces, little structures, little words, those are language of learning. Language for learning, talking about, saying, expressing, discussing, describing. Do you see? These are communicative verbs. They need to be in language for learning. Giving orientations, giving advice, regretting, ordering. For example, when you order food at a restaurant, agreeing, disagreeing, those are actions that you achieve through speaking a language, and this is language for learning. It includes the communicative functions. Last but not least, language through learning. How to make a big book, how to make a poster, how to make plan cards, interpreting maps. Do you see? They are learning more than English, more than grammar, more than tenses, more than vocabulary. They are learning how to interpret a survey, how to write an email properly, how to go through surveys, how to create a journal. They have tips, as I mentioned. We can have tips, we can have micro skills. These go in language through learning. Okay, and that was everything related to the first C. Now let's continue, let's move on, let's go through the following C. It's content. Content has all of the topics. Content is nothing about communication. Communication was about language, was about English. But here it's about anything. It's about any topic: geography, history, politics, biology, even life itself, family, friends. Those are the topics, the contents about which students are going to learn. So here Nothing about English, nothing about language. We are not going to see any grammar at all in this C. Here it's about topics, it's about subject matters. We also call them content cores. So once again, nothing about English here. Examples of them: animals, friends, celebrations. Do you see those are the topics themselves? That's the second C. That's another C. And we have more examples. They can be also related to science, geography, any other knowledge areas, space and planets, DNA, the cell, continents, countries, capitals, chemical elements, poverty. Do you see those are topics? They are not related to anything about grammar or English. They can be more simple because we also have students in preschool and primary school, so topics for them are going to be days of the week, places in the city, numbers. Those are topics that students need to learn, and they are not related to language. So these are contents. How does that sound? It's fantastic, isn't it? Okay. Next C is culture, and here we include all of the cultural matters, cultural topics, cultural issues, cultural skills. Everything that has a cultural background can be included in this C. For example, cultural matters and issues, those problematic situations that in nowadays world we can see, and there are quite a number of them. Problems that arise when people from different cultures face each other. Everything that is related to culture is going to go here. Different topics, food in China, celebrations in Europe, yeah, different dressing codes in Africa. And we can also include skills. When we say skills, we mean those abilities that students develop in terms of culture, but most specifically in terms of intercultural intelligence. What do we mean by that? Acceptance, tolerance, the ability that students may have in order to interact from people from different backgrounds and different languages. These are examples of them. Living in Venice, South African life, Colombian food and celebrations, because when we talk about culture, it doesn't mean that we have to talk about everyone else in the world except ourselves. No, it means that we talk about everyone in the world. And that includes everyone else, but also ourselves, because we are all within the same world. Night market in Taiwan, literature from Nepal. Everything that has a cultural background is going to go here. Last but not least, cognition. Cognition is the C that is related to the thinking processes, the cognitive processes that students develop. The idea here is that we don't go simple all of the life. We mean that students can start with simple processes, simple thinking processes, but we need to challenge them. We need to see to what extent students can give more and more, to what extent students can be challenged. In that sense, there are some processes that are more simple, like identifying, recalling, comparing, but there are some other processes that need more. Sometimes your brain needs to work more in order to achieve certain things. For example, when you create, you need to use your brain more. You need some more cognition. You need some more thinking to evaluate, to analyze. Okay, so this is the C in which we include all of the thinking, all of the processes that are related to thinking. Evaluate, analyze, understand, remember, and so on. So here we include verbs that are related to the mental processes. Create, evaluate, analyze, and those are enough examples. Remember that we outline the 4 C's individually and we put them in a map, but it's just for us to raise awareness, to be conscious of them, but it doesn't mean that they exist separately. In the classroom, they can be They can happen at the same time in different moments, and it's magical. But it doesn't mean that they exist separately. We just do the exercise of separating them so that we raise awareness. Okay? And this is a software that you can use. It's called MindJet if you want to use it in order to create your maps. Let's continue with the next part of the tutorial. Okay, in this third part of the tutorial, it's time for us to actually see how the 4 C's can be found in a unit of the book. Remember to distribute the whole book into the different terms of the year. So usually a term has 2 or 3 units of the book. In this case, the example is going to be only about 1 unit. And in this case, I took Our World number 3, student book 3 for 3rd graders. And I'm going to show you how page by page I found the 4 C's, and I created a map based on this. So remember that planning based on the 4 C's is about exploring. It's about taking the book and go through it page by page, and also identifying. As you go through the book, as you go through the units, remember to find the 4 C's there. Usually, and especially in these NatGeo materials, the 4 C's are there and they are easy to find. In case you don't find them, the idea is that you propose an activity for that. For example, oh, I didn't find something related to language through learning or language for learning. The idea is that you provide it yourself. Okay, so this is what a map looks like, and in the previous part of the tutorial, we already saw what each C contains, okay? And in this case, we're going to make this real. We're going to see a real example. So in this case, I took the 3rd unit of this book, which is here for real, and I started to identify the differences in the unit. So I started with the name right in the middle of the map. In this case, it's On the Move. And then I outlined the 4 C's: culture, cognition, communication, and content. In the first page of the book, I saw that students are going to learn how to identify kinds of transportation. Identify is an interesting verb, isn't it? It's very cognitive. It's related to the thinking processes of the students. So what is the appropriate C for identifying? That's right, it's cognition. So I went to the map and I wrote identifying different kinds of transportation in the category cognition. But that's not the end. I also saw that students are going to compare and contrast. They are also processes related to the mind of the students. So I put it in the map as well, as you can see. Then I continued, and I realized that there is a picture taken in Turkey, right in Istanbul. That's a cultural topic that I could develop in class. So I put it in the culture category. So as you can see, Taksim Square, Istanbul. But that's not the end. I continued, and in the following page, I found some vocabulary. Do you remember the category for vocabulary? Yeah, that's communication. But remember that communication has 3 subcategories. Do you remember the appropriate one for vocabulary? That's language of learning. Good. So I went to the map again, and I put all of the vocabulary that students are going to learn in this subcategory. Then I found that students are going to learn how to describe different kinds of transportation. So I put describe in the appropriate category. What is the appropriate category for describe? Remember that it's a communicative verb. Language for learning. That's right. Very good. But then I found that students are going to learn some grammar too. In this case, it's simple present, and they are learning how to reply in short answers. I do too, I don't. My brother does. My sister doesn't. And so on. And that's structure, that's grammar, that's little pieces of language. That's language of learning. Okay, I also found some more vocabulary, yeah, and it's related to biking. So I also put it in its appropriate category, and that's language of learning as well. Then I found that students are going to learn how to interpret a survey and how to write sentences about a survey. If we see and if we deeply analyze it, students are learning something more than language. Students are learning how to deal with survey, and in their real lives, that's going to be useful because they are going to face surveys on the streets, on the news, in their universities. So that's very important, and that's something more than language. That's just an excuse through which students are learning English as well. So what is the appropriate category for that? If I say excuse, if I say more than English, what is the appropriate category? Language through learning. And I put it here. Interpreting a survey. Interpreting, if you see it from the point of view that it's a thinking process, but you can also put it in language through learning. Okay. Here students are learning how to write sentences in simple present. So, expressing ideas in simple present. That's another example of language for learning. Here we reached an interesting point, and it's that not all categories are going to be clear all the time. Categories you can decide if you put an element in this or this category depending on how you look at that. For example, if we go back to interpreting a survey, if you see it from the point of view of the thinking processes of the students, on the brain of the students, that can be cognition. But if you see it from the point of view that students are learning how to create a survey or how to deal with a survey, in that case, and from that point of view, that's going to be language through learning. And let's move on. So as you see, little by little, we have been adding elements to the different C's, and it has been just like page by page. So I just read the book, the unit of this book, and as I was finding the different C's and the different elements, I was putting them in the map. So it's about finding and placing, finding and placing. How does that sound? Okay, let's continue. We haven't found contents yet, or I mean, they have been there, but we haven't talked about them. Let's see. In this case, I kept reading the book and I realized, oh my God, the topic about which we have been talking all of this time has been different kinds of transportation. So that's going to be the content, kinds of transportation. And there was also a reading about hot air balloons. That's also a topic. Remember that all of the topics about which students are learning in our English classes are contents. Everything that is not related to language, not grammar, not English, that's content. Those are topics. Those are contents. And I also found another reading about catching the bus in Curitiba, Brazil. That's in another part of the world that has a cultural background. Students are going to learn how that works in Brazil, in Curitiba. So I put that element, I put that topic in culture. Catching the bus in Curitiba, Brazil. And as you see, we have completed our map with the different C's. Page by page, I was finding elements that I was placing right in the 4 C's. Was it related to culture? Was it related to cognition? Was it related to content and the different topics that students are learning about? Or was it related to communication and language? So I hope this example was clear, and the idea is that you plan it like that. The idea is that you plan maps like these and that you include them in your syllabus, just like Palmira, Popayán, and Pasto did, okay? Remember to include one map per term, and one term has 2 or 3 units, depending on how you distribute the book in the whole year, okay? We are getting closer to the end of the tutorial, and I would like to show some other examples of maps that are finished and that were based on the 4 C's. These are very nice examples of them. And here we have, for example, moments in history. This is an example that was sent from Bucaramanga, Colombia, and it's ninth. It was a plan from 9th grade. It's a good example. We have seen culture, space exploration, cognition, design and create, which actually is very challenging, and that's very interesting to find there. This is all made by them, by teachers in Bucaramanga, to whom we congratulate for having made these very wonderful plans. Content, DNA story, South African life, which in this case can be a topic or it can be a cultural topic, depending on how you look at that, depending on how you think about it. And then communication. Culture, this is another example from 10th grade. Schools and education in Colombia and other countries. That's a cultural topic. Content, school and education. That's a topic. It's not related to language. It's a topic about which students are learning. Communication, it's language. It's all about English here. Language of learning, so vocabulary, grammar, in this case gerunds, infinitives, collocations and expressions, education-related words, language through learning, carrying out a survey. Yes, there were some spelling mistakes, but in this case, they are not that relevant. We really focused on how accurately you placed the different elements in the 4 C's. So we want to see that culture is very cultural, that cognition is very cognitive, that communication is very communicative, and that content is very content-based. Yeah? So every C needs to be clearly defined. And last but not least, another example is this one. Culture, shopping online around the world. Cognition, interpreting and comparing. Very thinking related. Those are cognitive processes. Content, what are the topics in this unit? In this term, advertising, spending money, shopping online. And communication, all of the English that students are going to learn. Okay, so this is the end of the tutorial, and we hope that this has been clear so far for you. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. These are our emails. Please, let's be in touch. You can also add us on Facebook, friend us on Facebook if you haven't. We also have a lot of things going on Facebook. We share resources, we share ideas. We are closer to other teachers who work in different schools, Bethlehemite schools, English teachers, so that the whole English teacher community is close, and so that we reduce distances and we feel close to each other. So these are our emails if you have any questions. And remember to include the 4 C's each term in the syllabus. So we need to see the 4 C's developed just like we just did with the book, with the unit, and that has to be in the syllabus. This is the very end, and we send you a lot of hugs, blessings, and we wish you a very nice week. Bye bye, Pamplona. See you soon. Okay, and in case you want to explore and you want to watch more tutorials about communication, cognition, culture, and content, you can watch the following videos made by Sister Angelica. You can click here.